Well, it's been over a year now since AbsoluteBlack launched their Graphenlube with some very big claims and even bigger price tag, and I've been testing nearly an entire bottle of it since then. I've used it on 3 different drivetrains, all on gravel bikes, and it is now time for me to give it the long-term review treatment. Does it live up to its own hype, and should you drop your hard-earned cash on it? Well, it's really quite complicated.
There is quite a lot of nuance and complexity involved in testing a product like this, so I've kind of broken this video down into the sort of broad outlining questions that people have had about this product once they heard that I've been using it. The first, is it easy to install?
Turns out it's pretty damn easy, and I did make a full video on the install and setup, so I'll give you an abridged version here. First step, soak the chains in some cleaning spirits for a few hours. Let them dry. Then soak the chains in a bunch of Graphenlube. Make sure they're completely covered, then pull them out and let them dry. Be sure to catch every single drop of Graphenlube that comes off them though, because that is literally money going away if you don't. I left both chains to set nice and hard overnight, and that is mostly it.
To be very clear, I set up the Graphenlube according to AbsoluteBlack's instructions. A lot of people said in my setup video that I should have done it differently, but I very intentionally did it according to how they said to do it, because that is also a very important part of testing the product itself. So I do have some thoughts on that process. For starters, I don't really think the immersion in those chemicals is enough to really clean off the factory greases. So I do have some instructions linked in the description below from the absolute master of drivetrain friction about how to properly clean your chain. Second, you absolutely need to clean the excess off from the outer plates of the chain after you've set up the Graphenlube. AbsoluteBlack does say you can use it as is, but I don't recommend that, because if you ride it in sort of dirty or wet conditions, it just gets really mucky and gross. So do wipe off the excess from the outer plates of the chain at least. Now I do appreciate that the setup was quite easy, but it's also quite wasteful, especially using the bag system that they do give you. You're just kind of losing little bits of Graphenlube at all stages, and given how expensive it is, it kind of drives you a little bit crazy as you're trying to save every single little drop. But now we're done with setup, it's time to get into the really meaty details.
The million-dollar question now is how it performs in drivetrain efficiency tests, and I will always refer to Adam Karen from Zero Friction Cycling for this sort of data. In his testing so far, which I'll link in the description below, he's found it excellent in dry contamination resistance, excellent in wet weather performance, and he says things like absolutely unrivaled in a single application longevity and genuinely low outright friction. And that all sounds great, but it does get a little bit complicated after that.
Now, Adam Karen's advice on maintaining the maximum performance of Graphenlube is that you do need to fully replenish it after it's been dirty, and that means a full re-immersion. But Graphenlube is advertised by AbsoluteBlack as a fairly standard drip lube after that initial setup, so their advice is to just kind of drip it into the chain links as you would any other lube.
Just a quick editor's note here, I've pinned a comment below with some more specific instructions from Zero Friction Cycling on how often you need to replenish, so check that out for all the information you could need.
So following AbsoluteBlack's advice, you do have a very easy and convenient system for maintaining the drivetrain. I would generally just hose my bikes down after they were really dirty, give them a tidy up with a microfiber cloth, and once it was dry, I would reapply the Graphenlube. It is very impressive how little muck and stuff the Graphenlube hangs onto. It really does seem to repel water and grit extremely well. And it is by far the cleanest lubricant I've used outside of wax. But of course, the problem is that you don't regain those impressive efficiency gains that you get from doing the first full immersion from fully clean. Thankfully, it still does run quite efficiently, which does have other side benefits.
I was very keen to test if the Graphenlube extends drivetrain longevity, because as a gravel biker, you tend to chew them up pretty damn quickly. And I'm happy to say that yes, I saw an improvement. Not an amazing one, but one that's certainly significant.
The drivetrains that I have used for testing are wearing way slower than I've ever had from a standard lubricant. The GRX drivetrain is around 50% wear at about 2,200 gravel kilometers, and the SRAM Force drivetrain is under 50% wear, and that's at about 2,500 gravel kilometers. And there's been a lot of really awful gross riding in there. So that is actually a pretty good result as far as I'm concerned. I also don't baby my bikes. I clean them with a hose and a cloth, and I kind of just get on with my life. So while I may not be absolutely maximizing the efficiency that could be there in the Graphenlube, I am getting the side benefits of a much longer lasting drivetrain without actually much maintenance burden. And that really does matter to me. That's something that I really value in the product. Saving you money on components definitely does go some way to justifying that whole price point. But importantly, how long does the actual bottle last?
With its considerable price tag, understandably, a lot of people want to know how long it lasts before they buy. Unfortunately, I don't know if I can really help you with that, because my riding style is pretty different to a lot of the people who are actually going to buy this stuff.
So it might say very proudly on the bottle itself that it will last up to 1,800 kilometers. But when you're a gravel biker, it lasts as long as your bike takes to be dirty enough to need cleaning, which for me can be a single ride at a minimum, or maybe a couple of weeks in ideal conditions where I haven't really been getting too dirty. If you're riding road bikes in nice conditions, then this stuff is going to last a really long time. But for me, with my gravel riding, I'm down to sort of the last 20% of the bottle after about a year and running it on 2 bikes, and with a full immersion setup done on 3 different chains. So be sure you buy it understanding that the longevity will depend on your riding style, not according to what the absolute maximum could be.
Alright, now it's time to address possibly the biggest elephant in the room. How does this compare to a wax setup? And realistically, it's both better and worse.
In short, Graphenlube is both more efficient and lasts longer on a single application than wax. But wax is much easier to replenish. I do my road bike after about 300 kilometers or so, and every time you drop it into the melted wax, it comes out in a sort of fully replenished and ideal state. To fully replenish Graphenlube, you have to fully re-immerse it again, and that's just something that I am certainly not willing to do. But if you're not super obsessed with absolutely maximizing the Graphenlube, then it is a much easier thing to live with than wax, because you never have to take your chain off. You can just sort of drip it in and leave it to dry as if it's any other lubricant. I do have to recognize though that wax is a lot cheaper to set up. A bag of molten speed wax, a new chain, and a slow cooker to sort of do the melting in is going to cost about half as much as a bottle of Graphenlube. Also, your drivetrain is going to last longer with a proper waxing schedule. So there really are advantages and disadvantages to both. And if cost was absolutely not a factor, I would go with Graphenlube for sure. I just much preferred the simplicity of Graphenlube over having to take a chain off and fully immerse it in wax. I know it's not absolutely hitting the upper limits of efficiency, but it is just easier to live with, and that is something that does matter. If Graphenlube was, say, $150 a bottle, then yeah, I would be absolutely using that full time, and I'd be happy to recommend it to other people based on my experiences with it. But for $240, it's a completely different conversation.
AbsoluteBlack Graphenlube is a product with such impressive potential, but the realities of living with it mean that you're unlikely to actually reach that. That said, I do quite like it. With that first immersion and ongoing dripping into the chain, you get a lot of genuine benefits.
The important thing is that you buy Graphenlube based more on the realities than on the sort of potential. Because I think most people just aren't going to be able to stick with the scheduling of keeping the Graphenlube absolutely in tip-top shape. If the price is too high, go wax. I've been waxing my road bike for 3 years, and yeah, I do actually prefer Graphenlube, but hey, wax still works and is really good. And that is where I'm gonna leave it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been valuable for anyone who is thinking of investing in Graphenlube or even in wax and wants to know if Graphenlube is a viable alternative. Feel free to stick around on the channel and watch all the other nerdy videos I've got going on. And don't forget to ride safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.